In Slovakia, democracy has become a sea for a shipwreck. Today, we can see that 31 political parties are likely to run for the next parliamentary elections. 31 political parties will compete in a 100% majority, which means that approximately 30.3% of each party will be elected, if everyone were to get the same share. Therefore, if we are to name democracy as a form of government, democracy must be effective. And I am calling on the Slovak political scene, based on the principles of free, democratic elections, to reform the Slovak political system. 31 parties cannot run for the next parliamentary elections, and we cannot stop the government based on the principles of broad coalitions, which are unable to function. Simply put, this is the truth. This form of democracy is harmful to the Slovak Republic. But let me remind you once again, I am talking about a reform based on the principles of free, democratic parliamentary elections. What are the other defects that we see today, especially in Europe? Is the right of every country to choose its own path respected in Europe? It is not. Is there a typical intervention in parliamentary elections in Europe? Of course there is. Let's look at, for example, Georgia. Let's look at, for example, Serbia. And let's talk for a moment about what happened in Slovakia in 2023. Is a different opinion respected? It is not respected at all. Is international law respected? Of course it is not respected. Is the fact that the European Union should be a peaceful project respected? Of course it is not respected. And on top of all this, on this cake of non-respect, we have such beautiful symbols. President Sarkozy, who talked so much about democracy, culture in Europe, is now legally convicted for taking money from the Libyan leader Gaddafi for presidential elections. We have here a commissioner for justice and human rights from the previous commission, who was walking around here, and he was wondering from morning to night how important it is to respect human rights. Isn't he guilty of taking dirty money? We hear everything from the president of the European Commission around the world, and yet we know about very serious SMSs that he wrote in connection with the Pfizer case. Europe has done a huge amount of dirty work for democracy, and we are in danger. We are in great danger if we don't talk about these things. Dear friends, let's now turn to the direction of Slovak social democracy. We started in 1999, and we have already co-absolved 7 parliamentary elections. The truth was, the only one. The Italian mafia killed a journalist at the government council. Whatever we said was said. It is not true. So, I return to myself in 2024, where we have a man who is already convicted. I think I said everything I needed to say. So, let me make it a little easier, even with a slap, because I don't want it to be just like in our dreams. I want it to be a little easier. And if it's some Easterners, then don't be angry, because this is what the Easterners were talking about, and they were dragging it out, and they were having fun. One says, I have an intuition that my wife is unfaithful. And how do you have an intuition? And what? Well, I think she is sleeping with a chimney sweep. And what is an intuition about? Well, I come home and she is sitting in bed. That's a good intuition, isn't it? The second one, I also have an intuition that my wife is sleeping with a carpenter. With a carpenter. And what is that intuition about? Well, I come home and she is washing dishes in bed. And the third one, but I have an intuition that my wife is sleeping with an iron bar. And what is that intuition about? Well, I come home and the iron bar is in bed. So, I just want to say that. That's exactly what this case is about. That's exactly what this case is about. So we have in our hands a carpenter who is convicted, not yet legally, but we can't say who he was connected to and where it all happened. And there, what happened in 2018, we are absolutely forbidden to say anything that might be different from what those who stand against us would expect. Dear friends, in 2020, I didn't even know the candidate for the party Smer Slovenská sociálna demokracia. In that direction, the election was lost, and we made a big mistake. If we had continued in 2018 and offered our story to the Slovak public, we would have won the election in 2020. But it doesn't matter. In 2020, dear friends, in 2020-2023, the peak of Slovak democracy came. Really, the peak of Slovak democracy. First, there was COVID-19, where people were forced to undergo unnecessary testing, vaccination, where human rights were severely violated by the fact that some places were closed. Then, there was the need to remove some media that were not suitable. So, some social networks simply shut down. Then came the war. Then all the media that provided other information, such as stupid Western propaganda. So, we can listen and read, but we can't read stupid Eastern propaganda anymore. These were huge interventions into basic human rights. And that wasn't all, dear friends. You know very well that in 2023, the peak of violation of democratic rules was what? The death of the referendum twice. Mr. Minister of Justice, how are you doing, Boris? Sit down with your people and ask me again whether we can return the members to the Constitution that will guarantee the citizens of the Slovak Republic that they can vote even through a referendum. This is our duty, and this is our duty towards the Slovak public. So, dear friends, please, look at this. I'm getting closer to the conclusion, and that is the year 2023. In 2023, and we all have to go back to that, there was a major intervention into the history of the Slovak parliamentary elections, despite the fact that we won them. Because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Great Britain hired activists, celebrities, and actors to Slovakia through an agency and in the interest of the opposing parties, or at the time, it was their parties that voted. They campaigned for foreign money. That's why, Tibor, I thank you. A novelization of the criminal law is being prepared, which says that if someone with the help of a foreign power influences the elections in a given country, a criminal act is allowed. But we still have to discuss this. How is it possible that a foreign country allows such a thing? Imagine that the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs would pay you, activists all over Slovakia, to write, to do, in the interest of the opposing parties, Slovak social democracy. Today, none of us would be here because we would all be locked up. Just like it was at the auto protest I mentioned in the years 2020 to 2023. In 2023, we won the elections. In 2024, what happened happened. Unfortunately, you continue. We didn't learn, we absolutely don't respect other opinions. I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about the Slovak political scene. We encourage young people to be rude, to be, I don't want to say, expressions that don't belong to such a glorious gathering. We encourage young people not to shake the hand of the President of the Slovak Republic. Where have you seen that a young man comes to the President of the Slovak Republic and doesn't shake the hand of the head of the state? That's not possible. We have to introduce mutual respect for young people and all of us, even if I have 1,000 different names. Today we stand for a difficult task. It didn't work out that they wanted to lock us up. I was accused 4 times. There are people here who really sat in a chair. I was a few centimeters from the chair. It didn't help that we were talked into it, that our families talked to us. It didn't help that our closest co-workers talked to us. It didn't help that they wanted to shoot us. So now they came up with a new idea. Let's make the government primarily from the direction of Slovak social democracy some traitors. What traitors? That we are against war? That we have a different opinion? What traitors? That we realize how important the supply of Russian gas and Russian oil is to Europe? What traitors? That we realize that without Russian nuclear fuel, we will probably not be able to operate our nuclear power plant? What traitors? That's why I want to make a challenge from this place. Let's call it the Nitrian Challenge. To those who stand in the stands and shout so much about freedom, even though they don't offer any alternative. We are telling you there, dear friends in the stands, as long as you shout in accordance with the law, we absolutely respect you. No one will shut you up. I know you don't like it, because you remind us on a daily basis that our bodies,